Saints fans. Unfortunately, a bit of a sour episode of Saints TV podcast, but of course, it does have its positives. Today, filling in for Jake, we've got Sarah with us. So, Sarah, welcome. I think this is your
Thanks,
second
Joycey.
potty.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, good. Thanks for having me back on. Good in general, not about yesterday, but, we'll get to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Marshy, how you feeling, mate?
Yep. Laddies and listeners. I don't know. I got stitched up this morning, because we were going, obviously chilly. So we're taking the girls for a stroll, and my Columbia jacket was in the car, and I had to. The only other jackets I've got is Saints ones, and the one that I'm wearing now, I'm just I'm gonna have to wear it. Yeah. So I wore the jacket, and it felt dirty putting it on this morning because of the effort the lads put in yesterday. And I don't say that lightly because I don't want to sound like a bit of a sooky pants, but usually that there needs to be a bit of time before I immerse myself back in the red, white, and black after one of those. And we haven't had a loss like that for at least this year, I don't think. I think Jake touched on it in his review, which was really, really on point. His review. I must admit, I do tend to doom scroll and check. I try to avoid it, but you can't. And so I like to see how Jakey handles himself after the tough losses, because I feel like it brings the best out of him. And he didn't disappoint. He was pretty on. Yeah, it was on the money with all the things that he said. But Saints footy, huh? Like Adelaide, that's where I was going with my point about Jakey's review. But even Adelaide, even though we got pumped and we're really never in that game, we still had moments. Whereas yesterday, he had not one. How did you guys see it?
Spot on, really. I think you said, Marshy, like Saints footy. I didn't see it yesterday.
No.
And it was from the first bounce. It just, I know what you mean. Like, I've got the Saints sticker on my, on my computer for school, and, I'm used to getting flack from the boys about, being a Saints fan or whatever. But, at least you can, when you've put in a good effort, and you can see the upsides as well as what need to work on, you can sort of hang your hat on that a little bit. But there was none of that yesterday. And I think for me, there's a point that stood out. There was a point, I want to say it was about the third quarter, where a statistic came up. It was tackle count. And Gold Coast were ahead by about 10 tackles and ahead by about 14, 16 points on the scoreboard. And I just said to my partner, I said, well, that tells the story, doesn't it? We haven't had the ball, and yet we haven't been tackling. The pressure wasn't there. The game plan wasn't there. Yeah, I'm with you, Marshy. It leaves you sort of, I'm a bit melancholy, sort of where to now, because, at this rate, I don't know about you guys, Joycey. Like, how are you feeling about North? I don't feel confident about North.
Yeah, well, it was such a game was such a far cry from the effort that we put out against Melbourne, and that's what was really disappointing to me. Was I said to myself during the week, now the boys will come out and they'll put on the field the effort that they did against Melbourne, and we'll come out and we'll have a good win, and that'll pretty much, secure finals for us. We need to win this game for us to prove that, yes, we can be in finals and we can be competitive. But we just didn't show up, and I think Rossi's presser was great. And you were saying, how do you think we'll go against North Melbourne? And he said, we won't even compete with North Melbourne if that's the effort that we're going to put up. So it was just lackluster. We were at the Bentley Social, so it was, misery loves company. So it was good to be around a lot of Saints fans, and it was a great turnout as well. So thanks for everyone coming out and having some food at Bentley Social, and having a beer and watching the boys put on an awful performance. But it was
such a good turnout. Let's chat about the Social for just a moment.
Let's go positive.
Let's go. The positive pants, because we know where we're going with this one. But the turn up, and it was good vibes. And I feel like there were a few people where the frustration boiled over a little bit, which is understandable. And I probably put my hand up there. There are a few times where I, sort of lost it a little bit, but overall, I think it was a great vibe, and I hope that people, awesome turnout, and I hope that doesn't put people, off coming back in the future, because it was, I think, from our our hosting point of view, it was just one of those games where it was such an energy drainer. It was just really flattening what we were watching. So I don't think we really kind of we weren't at the level that of the hosting sort of thing. So I know that we said that there'd be a prize for best dressed, and there was a best dressed. There was a young lady, and I sort of actually know the people who are associated there. She had full Saints kit on, Saints tutu, just the works. So that she'll be getting a little prize in the mail for sure. But I guess it was just great turnout. Shame the boys didn't turn up. Basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Something happened before the game, and everyone turned their heads and went, "What was that?" And it was actually one of the spherical lights on the wall fell down.
What was that? The smashed
everywhere. It was one of the spherical lights on the wall. So it was a ball-shaped light, right?
Omen.
So it was the omen that we were just going to drop the ball.
I thought it was a really loud and big plate.
Well, it was a massive bulb. Like, I'm talking, it's as big as my head. So big as my head.
Were there any casualties?
That's for sure. But no casualties didn't fall near.
That's good.
So it was fine. But it was definitely an omen, as you were saying, Sarah. That for things to come. Hopes and dreams shattered on the floor of the Bentley Social. I think it's really hard to sort of have discourse about this game that isn't, you can't pull any positive from it. The most positive thing about the weekend was the Bentley Social and the turn up and having a chat with everyone there. But there was not one player where you went, oh, that's a positive. I mean, Nasiah Wanganeen-Millia was probably it. He's still getting his hands on the ball plenty, but I think all of it. And Paris's debut was good. Yeah, he had I think he had 14 touches or something, laid a few tackles. So it's good to see his pressure. But, and Rossi said during the press conference, it's, he now knows how tough it is at the top level. And we just had our backs to the wall the whole game. They came out on fire. Look at their midfield. And that's where I think our problems really started with Anderson, Rao. Who else was floating through there?
Ned
Alice
Flanders.
on the wing. Ned Flanders. Yeah, Flanders. Sam Flanders had a ripper game. And they just looked like a team that the shackles had come off. The Stewie Jew shackles that they were under they were trapped to for the past 6 years had come off. They could play the way that they wanted to play, and they just played fantastic, free-flowing footy, like the best football that they've played all year, I'd say. And the damning thing about that was it wasn't even that good. I remember chatting to a couple of blokes at the Bentley Social, and they were talking to me at halftime saying, well, the good thing is Gold Coast can't get much better and we can't get much worse. So, it can only be up from that performance. It can only be up from there because, we're coming up against North Melbourne, who have some wise heads as well as Gold Coast. And, we just let players into the game that shouldn't be getting a kick. Like Rory Atkins hasn't had a kick in a couple of years and kicks 2 goals from the halfback flank and 30 disposals or so. So
that's it. I mean, and it's no shade to Rory Atkins.
Oh no,
Gold Coast have a few players who, are going to make a very comfy latter part of their career up on the Gold Coast, and good luck to them. That's fine. But we made Rory Atkins look like an absolute star yesterday. And no shade to Rory Atkins, but it sort of it seemed even like players like Brandon Ellis looked like he was still playing at Richmond, with his in and under work in the midfield. Like, it's hard not to get all doom and gloom about it. And it's, I suppose as a St Kilda supporter, I get really philosophical about it, which is really not the right thing to do. But Marshy, you say there's a great turnout at the at the Bentley social, and you've got this legend in the Saints tutu and all this stuff. And there's a lady who sits down near me at Marvel. She's taken all of her Saints scarves and turned it into like a poncho, so she wears it. She looks ace like every week. But I stop and think about, you think about that and you just go, for a club that doesn't really have much to hang their hat on, at least in the first half of the season, you go, at least we have a game plan. We know what our DNA looks like. How many more years is this going to keep happening to us? We'll keep rocking up. Of course we will. But for God's sake, I mean, where to is the question, because the personnel really hasn't changed that much since the start of the year. I think after round 6 or 7, we could all sort of sit there and list 5 or 6 hallmarks that really identified our brand of football, what Saints footy looks like. It was running. Everyone talked about fitness and how fit of a side we were. It was pressure. But then also that our ability to, slingshot from the back line, run and spread and give ourselves options. I haven't seen that in at least the past 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Even with King going out last week, which is, really, really unfortunate for him. I really feel for Kingy and any player that can't get that consistency in their game. But last week I said, actually this is going to be okay. We went all right without Kingy at the start of the year because we had to find alternate means to get to goal. But I don't know about. I didn't see I couldn't tell you, apart from maybe 1 or 2 occasions yesterday, I saw a forward lead.
Yeah. Definitely.
Everyone seems to be running from the ball rather than to. I don't know. I can't see what I saw at the start of the year.
Well, I think there was a couple of, like Cooper Sharman. We'll touch on him for a second. He looked like he adapted the easiest out of the bunch. And that's something I've always said about Cooper Sharman. When he came into the team, he was a breath of fresh air for me because he was the only player willing to lead up at the football. So in the first quarter or the first half, he took 2 marks. He had 3 shots on goal and kicked, I think, 2 of them, and one of them didn't make the distance. And 2 of those marks were on the lead, and one of them was contested. And that's how you want to play your football. That's how I want to see Max King play his football, but we've just been putting it on his head for far too long. And unfortunately, he's just getting injured. So, but the thing I will say is that in terms of coaching, we've gone from a side that's had a big key forward to target and a couple of really good crummers around him. And now we've gone to a football side that's lost that target and lost one of its key crummers in Jack Higgins, who's good for a couple of goals a game. And we are absolutely lost, and we don't have any answers. And you've got to put that down to not only the adaptations of the players on the field, but also the coaching group. I know Robert Harvey is our forward line coach, and it just must be such a headache for him having to deal with such a different forward line every week. Like we had the same forward line for the first 5-6 weeks, and we had 5 wins and 1 loss, and barely a loss to Collingwood.
Yeah,
that's it. But like with our forward line, we do not have one player in there, the experience or otherwise, that is a general of the forward line. That say we don't have a Wilkie in the forward line that can direct traffic, and we just don't seem to have the smarts or both within the forward group and that connection, bring it into the forward line, into being able to make that work. Because I was blowing up in the thread last night, Sarah and listeners, and it's about that. It's about Robert Harvey, and he's our forward line coach. And any game plan should be ideally one that, regardless of personnel, you should be able to go in there and everyone should know what's going on. That's what Sandy, the 2 should be there for, to sort of, I guess.
And which club would you say does that the best?
Collingwood. Yeah, Collingwood, Sydney. I don't know. Everyone, bar St Kilda, even North make it work. They still get a score. It might not be a big score, but they generate their goals that they generate is through eventually clever play. But I guess my biggest concern is that, not biggest concern, I've got a lot of them, to be honest. But Robert Harvey has brought nothing that he's learnt from Collingwood, where it was Myercheck as that undersized key forward, surrounded by smaller forwards, and they made it work because they were all leading into space. They were all on the same page, and it helps when you get some decent delivery, but at least creating those opportunities. And on top of that, I just think that St Kilda Football Club, we were saying it when you were last on the potty, Sarah, what was our sort of biggest fear as being St Kilda supporters following the West Coast game and all of that. And mine, it wasn't one that I saw coming, but it's one that I felt before, is that the realization that we are just a systemically conditional football team. Like the players that we have, they just choose when to rock up. There's no rhyme or reason, and you just cannot trust them. And that is what, even with the Richo days, we knew when we were going to be bringing effort. We just didn't have the talent to continue it on, or the legs to continue it on for 4 quarters. But you knew every week they would rock up and have a crack. We're not doing that.
No, not at all.
No. And that's I think the biggest criticism I reckon I found from yesterday is, it doesn't take talent to have effort, and it doesn't take talent to chase or put pressure on. Joycey, you said before, about the forwards looking lost. I reckon that sums it up perfectly. If you're cooking something and you need to sub in an ingredient, you sub in something predictable, something's going to work, right? Yeah. So I agree with you, Marshy. It's the same as the forward line. Our game plan should be predictable to our players, because if I look up and I'm running, I'm running down the wing or whatever, I should look up and I should see my player there. I don't care who it is, but they're going to be there because that's the game plan. Yeah, the delivery, agreed. It can be shocking at times. It's chaotic. It's stressful when we bomb it in like that, because what does that allow for in terms of structuring game plan? It doesn't.
Yeah.
And again, for all intents and purposes, a substandard backline, again, are intercepting half of our deliveries yesterday. I agree with you. It's frustrating that the system that seemed to really stack up against the best teams in the competition at the start of the year has broken down completely. And Ross Lyon said it last week or 2 weeks ago. I don't know why that is. That's troubling for me.
So let's have a talk about, there was some really obvious things happening in the game. So I think that our defenders, I just want to touch quickly as well that I always have an issue with a coach that hasn't played in a particular position that is the coach of that area on the football field. So Robert Harvey, don't get me wrong, greatest midfielder that St Kilda's ever produced. One of the greatest midfielders ever, only just been knocked off his disposal record over the last year. But he doesn't seem to me that he's a forward line specialist. And this goes back to the days of us having a poor defense in the hands of Aaron Hamill. Aaron Hamill wasn't a backman. He was a pressure forward. He knew forward lines very well. So we had him as a defensive coach. And then you look at who we've got in now, Corey Enright. He's fixed our backline. Our backline's been really good. But unfortunately, our defense yesterday was horrible because the midfielders didn't want to push back and help out. I think, and that's where Gold Coast were just able to walk it out of our backline, out of their backline. It was purely because they had their midfielders willing to put in the hard yards to go back there and help out their defenders. They always had an exit kick. Even their half forwards would push up the ground for that exit kick and make sure that they could get it out. And they were just walking it out of the forward line. We had no answers for it because our midfields just didn't put in the hard yards. They had a lot of their touches up and down, like in the midfield, but at either end of the ground is where the really important ones happen, and we just weren't playing as a team. So what needs to happen against North Melbourne to be able to fix that? What's the system that needs to be put in place? And this is what they'll be looking at come Monday, come Tuesday. And I'd be really disappointed if they still had the Monday off, because I think they've lost their privileges to sit and relax on the Monday. I think they should be going into the club and having a bit of a meeting. But
well, they had their RDO yesterday. to be honest.
Did they? Yeah.
Oh no, as in they didn't turn up for work yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go.
Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, registered day off. Sorry, it's a bit slow picking up on that one. Sunday afternoon. But yeah. So what needs to happen now? The review will be happening tomorrow. But what are the coaches getting together and saying? Is it going to be okay? Well, the midfielders need to lift. The forward line structure needs to do
There
X,
should
Y,
be
Z.
a rule. No, all right. Marshy, he's put in as coach. Halves, you can just take a break for a week, because I thought Robert Harvey, it was a little bit confusing in that as a forward coach, but then I thought maybe the reason being he knows how to deliver it into the forward line. When he's playing, when Harvey's playing, do you think he's bombing it? Do you think he's just kicking it to a 50-50 at best? God, no. He's hitting a target. Or if he's not hitting a target, he's waiting for somebody. Or he's just, And that's what I would like to see, is that there should be a rule that if we got the ball, we're 70 meters out, and there is not one person running in the forward line, then all right, I'm going to go laterally. We're just going to wait until
well said.
That should be the rule, unless someone's leading, or either wait or he's put it into space. Because if we kick it into a contest and we've got a 19-year-old Caminiti, who God knows we've been asking so much of him, he can't do it. Oh, so much.
Yeah.
And
just go on.
I was just going to say that, and the refusal to play Tom Campbell, poor Marshall, he was absolutely flogged yesterday. He was flogged after the game last week, and he needed support. But you beauty, play Marshall forward. He takes one at the top of the goal square. He provides a target, and then that at least justifies this banal game plan that we've got at the moment, where we're just bombing it in.
100%.
I don't know.
And there was an instance yesterday where I just want to touch on what you talked about, because that's exactly what I was going to bring up. Just because you're the person that has the ball 55 to 75 meters out from our goal doesn't mean you have to be the one kicking it inside 50. It does not mean that. Brad Crouch lined up from 55 meters out yesterday and thought that he had to be the bloke to deliver it inside 50. You don't. You do not. And that was what was so beautiful about Ross Lyon's football back in, 08 to 2012, or 07 to 2011, whatever it was. There was no rush. There's no rush. We can play frenetic football. And you look at teams like Geelong. God, they're good at it.
Yep. They just keep it moving up and down until they, shift the defense and then find somebody.
Find an opening. And more often than not, it'll be Tom Hawkins, who's the best set shot in the game at the moment. And it's just a fantastic work ethic, and it's fantastic understanding from everyone.
And that's it. They control the momentum. It doesn't matter what the momentum is, whether it's slow or whether, they're going to beef it up, but it's theirs. It's in their hands. I would hope this week that the review starts to, I would hope that somewhere it's player led.
Yeah.
At some point, you get the leaders involved and leading the conversation at some point to be like, what the hell's going on here? Because if the coaches don't know, let's look inward and look within the playing group. I think one of our strengths at the beginning of the year was the way that we moved the ball and kept moving the ball. Rather than marking, stopping, propping, going back, and then forcing, those long kicks down the line or into the forward 50. Because I think that faster ball movement when it's going to work out. I wanted to say I saw hints of it yesterday. I saw hints of a possibility of it yesterday. If we hadn't sort of, fumbled and made so many skill errors at times. Yeah. But like if you're on the move, either you're moving laterally if you can't find someone inside 50, you wait for that opportunity, but you're keeping your opposition on their toes. That predictability of that bomb into the forward 50 is just, and it's really suited those sides that are stacked really well defensively, or those sides that just have one or two really sensational backmen, like when Sicily absolutely towed us up a few weeks ago against when we played against Hawthorn. So I think, apart from that moving away from that stagnant ball movement, I would honestly rather see us turn the ball over trying to run and spread rather than this bombing down the line.
Yeah,
intercept mark,
stretch the
or,
ground. And
or
that was
kicked,
how we got our
kicked
first
directly to the
goal.
opposition. I can't stand
Yeah.
that. I cannot stand that.
So
Oh, that's
our
pet peeve
first
of
goal,
mine too.
oh, shocking. But our first goal yesterday came because we finally decided to stretch the ground. We finally decided to go, okay, we were playing the wings up and down all of that first quarter, second quarter. It was just horrid. But we finally decided, hey, here's a good shout. I've got this kick to centre half back. I can't remember who did it, but it was perfect. Centre half back over to the other side of the wing, opened up the whole ground, and it was take your pick. Absolutely take your pick. So just that, as you were talking about, systemic football, Marshy.
Yeah,
so coachable.
We so coachable. And two things left from me just on the bombing hitting, because we could spend a whole episode just talking about that. But one, to me, the bombing aspect of it, if we're going to do that, and this a fella at the social raised this point, so it's not mine, but I thought it was pretty fair, was if we're going to bomb it, which we are, at least do it to the boundary line so that we can kill it, because we're not going to mark it, kill it, and then at least get a stoppage inside. Yeah, reset, try and bring our smalls into the game, because they, and so, but that would require a little bit of thought and perhaps even a little bit more skill, because you have to, you don't want to kick it out in the full. But bombing it, that last kick, that bomb, to me is just an extension or just another iteration of making it someone else's problem. And that's what we did throughout all the game. Yesterday was just these shitty handballs that go nowhere. But it's like, the hot potato. It's like, I'm not going to be the man. It's your problem. You sort it out. And then even when, going for goals, like we had Machito running in, takes a bounce. You have every license to have a ping at that stage of the game. Just go for goal. Don't just kick another. Yeah.
You expect it running inside 50, don't you, from a forward?
Yeah, exactly.
And this is where I think that Machito, Owens, and Caminiti get themselves into situations where they are surprised at how well they've done, and they panic. And that's where I think that Machito was in that instance, was like, oh, geez, I've burnt these two. What do I do now? Because their mind is just so focused on winning that small contest there that the finishing aspect of it is very, very hard. So, yeah, but I'm with you. You just got to go for it. You got to take your opportunities. Machito, Owens, for me, we talk about the blokes that had license earlier in the season, and we thought, Gresham, he's got license. He's been found out. He has no license for me. But
me too.
Machito has it. Machito has the license to play freely. Now, Ross has already come in and revoked the license of someone like Windhager. So he did a good role in the second half trying to take Noah Anderson out of it. But
Windy was good.
Windy was good. He was really serviceable, had 28 touches, which is good because he hasn't been thereabouts in a long time.
Yeah, he's had a bit of the second year blues.
Yes, correct.
And he did in that second half yesterday. I mean, Anderson chopped us up yesterday, but Windy did a good job on him in that second half. So,
definitely. But unfortunately, they had the initiative to go, okay, well, Anderson's getting towed up now by Windy. Geez, my name's Sam Flanders. I'm going to put my hand up and have a ripping second half and help out my brother. And we just don't have any of that. And I feel sorry for blokes like Jack Sinclair who have been that bloke for the past 2 years. He was one of the boys that was just like, nah, I'm here to help out my team. If it doesn't look good, I'll make it better, and I'll help out my brothers. And he had an off day yesterday. No one was there to help him out. He looked sore and he looked tired, but no one else was there to help him out. Crouchy looked sore and tired. We all just looked like we'd thrown absolutely everything at Melbourne last week. And usually when that happens, you cause an upset and you win. We didn't come out with the win, and this loss would have been justified by the win last week. But now we come out, we're two losses in a row.
Yeah.
Well, some
Yesterday,
finger pointing.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Marshy.
No, you go.
Well, that's where I'd love to know that the boys are looking at one another this week. And you're saying like, why aren't you running for me? Why aren't you presenting that option? Why aren't you following through on the plan or what we did? What we endeavoured to do and this and that. Because Ross Lyon alluded to it yesterday. Yeah, Sinclair had an off day yesterday. But I'm not going to begrudge Jack Sinclair for having an off day. He's been exceptional for the last 2 years and sensational this year. Someone like Machado, who's, has the license to go and take his opportunities. He's a 18, 19-year-old kid. He'll get there in terms of the way he plays the game. But, yeah, I would like to see some honest finger pointing at players like, dare I say, Zach Jones, sort of saying, where are you, mate? Like, what are you doing to help? Like you say, that brotherly mentality.
And
where
for
is
me,
it?
like, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with you guys there because what to me was really obvious in what our mindset was yesterday, and there's a couple of instances from Dan Butler. He's had a great season, but the last couple of weeks, or let's just say yesterday, was really poor. And Paris is coming in for his first game as a small forward, and he's had more impact than Butler. Okay, so that's one. That's one thing. But early in the game, when I think it might have been Sharman gets the free kick in the goal square, I think it was.
Yeah.
And in the goal square, and the play is completely stopped, and Butler's run on and try to kick a play on advantage goal. Hell no, you have not earned that, Butler.
No.
And no one's missing that, unless Josh Bruce can come back and play for us. No one's missing that from the goal square. So it was just selfish and just not looking after your brethren there. And
desperate to get on the board.
That's my experience.
That's it. And maybe that's where, Ross Light was saying what's going on. Well, maybe we need to, maybe it's not a game plan thing entirely. Maybe we need to look at one another as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's what he was saying. He was like, there's a lot of people that have been making the same mistakes and have been getting away with it, but we can't afford to do that anymore. So he has definitely set this club up to find out who was worth it and who isn't. And it's getting to crunch time of the season. This is where teams either find form or they lose form. We see teams like Geelong starting to find form. GWS, Carlton are starting to find form. We've got two of those sides coming up. And I dare say that in those games, if we're not going to bring any effort, we will get found out. And we'll get found out pretty badly. And we could be dropping as low as 11th or 12th this year if we don't want to show up. So, we've got
to mean business though in that second half of the year, don't we? Though
yeah, correct. Yeah.
Sorry, in this last part. Sorry, I was just going to ask you, fellas. Like, I don't mind that from Ross Lyon. In such a public forum, saying there's people who aren't standing up, and we need to sort of call it out. Then I would expect that then to be reflected in the selection, in the game plan. But I don't have any problem with Ross Lyon sort of saying to the group, these are challenges ahead for us, but if you're not going to show us what you're made of, then I would not be surprised if you don't have a contract again at the end of the year, or, we don't look to offload you, because I agree with you. Someone's got to start setting those high standards. We can't accept this mediocrity anymore if we're going to really go to the next, what you said, excuse me, Marshy, about, worrying about being the mediocre, predictable football club. If we're going to change that, the change has to come from somewhere.
Yeah. And this is around the time in 2008 where he was coaching and he was seeing a lack of effort from a lot of players, and he dropped two of our best players in Stephen Milne and Nick Del Santo, and boy, did they react to that. So I know it's different times, but there's stories of Ross Lyon coming in after, a half of football and grilling and looking at every player and going, look, you've done this wrong, you've done this wrong. And then he looks at Nick Riewoldt and he's like, Nick Riewoldt, the captain, one tackle for the year, and he gets stuck in like that. So I think it's almost due for a Rossi spray.
No doubt.
And yeah, and that you talk about different sort of eras of football and different generations, but I still think that as being, I'm 28, I'd still respond to a coach spray. I'd still respond to that and say, geez, okay, I need to play for this bloke because he's putting his ass on the line for us week in, week out and doing a lot of work. I want to play for him. And I reckon they'd respond to that. So it might be time for a bit of grumpy Ross.
Well, it's just being direct. Like I think that the way the world's gone a little bit is people have forgotten how to accept direct feedback, and that may not materialize in just abuse or trying to get something out of via that way. But when people don't like, it's natural. People don't like being called out for, I guess, what are perceived deficiencies or what have you. But the whole idea of it is that you take it on board and you use that to get better, because
correct,
he's a coach. Like that's that's what he is there for. That is the coach's role.
Yeah, I don't want to get sprayed, so I'm going to play better. I hate getting sprayed.
That's right.
Yeah, and then you get to a point.
Yeah.
And when you get enough consistency about you start to get treated like Jack Sinclair and go, okay, mate, you've had an off week. You know what you need to do now. Get back on track. And he will. Jack Sinclair will come out next week and be best on ground. So
there's a distinct difference between criticism and feedback.
Yeah.
Feedback is that forward focused stuff, right? It's I'm giving you this info so that you can edit it in your practice so that it improves going forward. And I agree with you. You can't be precious about receiving feedback, because feedback is about improvement and about getting better. And if you're not going to be receptive to that feedback, I mean, I don't know an industry that doesn't sort of hang its hat on feedback, but that's right. Is that where we're at, with our group? Everyone's a little bit too precious about hearing the hard messages and that sort of thing. You can't be afraid of that.
Yeah. So, Sarah, you're essentially saying as a teacher, it's time to get the red markers out and do some
Tell you, if that game yesterday was an essay.
Yeah, they're your class. They're your class. It's 10-3, Sarah. How are you addressing your class?
First of all, fellas, if the bell goes, that's for me, not for you. No, I'm kidding. No, if yesterday was an essay, I would take my red pen and make it bleed. That's it. There would be no comments. It would just be see me, underline, paperback.
I think we've stumbled upon a segment here. So Sarah's
the grade.
Brilliant. All right. Well, I think we'll end that segment there. That's brilliant. That's really given me a few ideas going forward. But we'll get stuck into a bit of Jackie's junk. Oh, well, actually, this week I finally get my own segment.
Yes.
I feel proud. I can't stuff it up. I'm very, very nervous. I've got them here. It's time for a bit of Joycey's junk mail.
Oh,
Jakey's junk mail. Jakey's junk mail. Jakey's junk mail. Jakey's junk mail.
Welcome to Joycey's junk mail. We'll go hard hitting.
Surely
first.
the intro has Joyce's junk.
Oh, yeah, see, that's the problem. I didn't have the equipment all the time.
I'm surprised you didn't have one just already waiting to go.
Yeah, I've got my guitar right now. I was gonna. Yeah, that's it. I was thinking about it, but if it wasn't a remote pod, I would have set it up. But yeah, regardless, Joyce's junk mail. All right, we've got the Caluminatis. The Caluminatis. I reckon that's a word play on Illuminati and Callum. Okay, that's a stretch. Play on. The same guys making the same errors. Yeah, that's it. The same guys making the same errors. Who was Ross talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, good question.
Because it seemed like a collective. Like it's just like there's maybe a couple of obvious ones. I'd say Gresham's definitely in that boat.
That was going to be my one. Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon Gresham.
Just and Doogs, like that's like feel sorry for Doogs, but he sometimes makes it a bit tough.
And it's
Yeah.
harsh, but I saw
Yeah.
Ross Lyon having a chat to him at either quarter time or 3/4 time, chatting to Liam Stocker. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, Liam Stocker is a 90%, beautiful kick. But then a few times it'll just be the wrong decision at the wrong time. And I think it was purely instructive from Ross Lyon, but I reckon he'll be part of that crew as well. But yeah,
But
and then
it seemed like it. So outside of like those obvious sort of types, that it's hard to actually think of an like an individual, but it's just as a collective. It's just that it seems like every player does it. So
yesterday it really did.
Yeah, Crouchy's handballing to feet.
Oh God, yeah.
That was
Or
disease,
handballing to miss targets.
Yep.
Yeah. I agree with you. It was that collective of I'm not going to spot up the best option for us as a side. It was more just that I'm going to get rid of it so I don't have to be the man. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got one here from Sam Boyd. Realistically, how many blokes do you expect to see culled this week?
It depends.
Riddled with injury as well. Yeah.
So I reckon there'll be a couple. I reckon that I dare say that maybe Gresh is going to have a week on the sidelines.
So that's the thing with Gresh, we can't, because honestly, I reckon he's had a handful of good games, but to me, he's not a midfielder. I think we've spoken about that before, but he's not a mid. He's a forward, but he's playing in that role. Fair play, but he's purely getting a game at the minute because of what might transpire at the end of the year. That if he 100%. Does go to another club, like you can't take,
isn't it?
Exactly. Like I think, for want of a better term, we're sort of bulking him up for the market, because if he's playing at Sandy, we can't then expect offers to come in that would be what we would want to lose him for, because he's just, I don't know. To me, he seems like a player who needs a change, or he needs to be playing in the forward line. He's not a midfielder, because too often he just under pressure, and footy is pressure. Under pressure when he's going for goals, he's good. But when he's under pressure and he's expected to hit a target to continue the play, it's just I don't think it's in his bag of tricks. Yeah, at the moment he can't do it.
No. Yep. Yeah, I'd like to see a bit of a mix. Well, in terms of who you drop, I don't know. I want to see Tom Campbell come in to give Rowe a chop out, and so we can potentially, mix up the chemistry in the forward line. But yeah, I think Gresh probably comes up as one to have a rest. And yeah, I don't know. My whipping boy yesterday was Zach Jones. For what he can deliver as a player, for the experience that he's had. But who comes in for him?
It's all well.
I'll give
good
Zach
to go
Jones a bit of a head nod yesterday. He copped one of the worst corkies I've seen in a while.
Very true.
That first
Very
quarter.
true.
And it was from Ben Long. And we know how pointy Ben Long is. He destroys footballers. That is his job.
True.
He had a great game yesterday. But he copped it right on the top of his hip, and his whole leg would have been stiff. So
that's fair.
I will give props to him to say that he played out the game, because he would have been in a lot of pain and he wouldn't have had a very comfortable flight home. So I think that maybe he does stay in, but he could be one of those blokes that's potentially a sub.
True. Yeah, true. Very true.
Yeah. Comes on for with a bit of firepower. Alrighty. This one's from Michael Lee, an email. Love the pod, love the Bentley Social. Not so much on Saturday. Thank you, Michael. Curious to get your thoughts on Ross's presser and this notion of year of exploration. I'm a little concerned that you have a year of exploration with the least number of rotations in the AFL, West Coast included. Where do you think this list is at? I'm concerned that this year of exploration hasn't featured the likes of Connolly, Highmore, Heath, Bytel, and Patton.
Well, I think we explored Patton. I think we know what he brings to the table, and at the moment, I don't think he would offer what we a craving. I could be wrong, but I definitely agree with Highmore and Bytel, especially. I don't think Connolly's shown enough in the twos, but Tom Campbell as well. We don't, we're spoken about as being heavy into Tom de Koning for what I could imagine would be to rekindle that two ruckman kind of setup that we had with Paddy and Rowe. But why can't we do that with Tom Campbell? And one thing that my pet peeve is not rewarding good form. And Tom Campbell, he's just been knocking down the door. But if you're not going to open it, what's the point? Same with Highmore. But Tom Campbell, you can't pick out a fault of his. Maybe when he goes forward, he doesn't capitalise. But that's you're playing at Sandy, and Sandy is a shit ground for clean football. Like, it's a beautiful ground to go there and whatever. But in terms of actually, it lowers the skills a little bit just because of its geographical position. But Heath isn't ready. He's definitely not ready. Sorry, that was a bit of a long-winded one from me.
No, it's a good discussion. Like, this year of exploration, I don't know. Is it almost like we started better than we thought? So now that we're in a position to push for the 8, Ross doesn't want to mess with the makeup too much. I don't know, but it's a hard one, isn't it? Because Ross came in last year after our trade period, and even yesterday in the presser he alluded to some things that he wants to work on that you can't until pre-season. So it's an interesting one. I really like Jack Bytel. Is he injured at the minute? I know he's had a shocker run with injury.
Yeah, he played the week before, last week.
Yep.
But
okay,
you think he clearly just doesn't. He's not. Well, he hasn't played really, so I suppose that says enough. Tom Highmore can't get a look in.
Yeah.
You touched on it before, Marshy. ETA on Max Heath. What do you reckon? Are we going to see him this year, or are we going to hold off?
Oh, he's not ready. He's really not ready. We might, but I think you just like Paris. He's come in. He's made his debut, but he can run out a game of football. He is incredibly fit. Like, that's kind of his, when his pace and his fitness, that they're his strengths. Whereas Heath is that bigger bodied ruckman, younger. He's time because he hasn't even been playing. He's been playing. Tom Campbell does the rucking, and Heath will do about maybe 10 minutes a game, if that, on the ball. And so he's playing as that deep forward, and he's gassed, and he's not getting up and down the ground. He's playing pretty much a stay-at-home forward. And don't get me wrong, he's definitely a player who I think another preseason will be. He'll be a player for us. I'm sure of it. But at the minute, if you were to play him, it would just be. I don't think it would be in his best interests.
Yeah. 6 games to go. And this is from this is from Ollie Owen Fraser. That's a good name, Ollie Owen Fraser.
It is. It rolls off the tongue nicely.
Nice.
That's very good.
Very nice.
Yeah. 6 games to go. After recent form, how do we approach each game? Finals in mind? ? Sarah?
Just like recalibrate. I reckon it's almost like they need to be reminded that of the form at the start of the year, to be like, this is still you. You can still play this way. But a recalibration of some sort. Very easy for me to say, but yeah.
Yeah, North and Hawthorn, yeah. And that's the thing, like, we're 6. Like, we are absolutely the St Kilda, Stephen Bradburys at the minute, because every other team is just falling, and we are still where we are. And as long as we're firmly in the finals hunt, we've got winnable games. But it's just the boys. They need to find something, and whatever that is, if they can just harness, recalibrate, and just get a little bit of mojo. We've talked about circuit breakers. We haven't had one this season. I thought maybe last week against Melbourne with our effort was a circuit breaker in that respect, but clearly not. But yeah, North, I'm confident. I reckon we'll pound them by 10 goals. And if we do that, then we're up and about. Like, season's back on. We're still in the top 8.
Yeah, just a game where we can, get some of our mojo back. I agree, and just, feel like that first half of the season side again. Yeah, it does wonders for the old mojo Saints footy.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to wrap up Joyce's junk mail with a question of my own in a bit of a different style. In a year of exploration, there will be culls at the end of the year. We are, I'd say, do you think that we are exploring our seniors rather than exploring our seconds? So this is where I put to you, who's more in danger of getting delisted? Is it going to be someone like a Jack Bytel, or is it going to be someone like a Seb Ross? Have we got it wrong in terms of exploration? Are we trying to find out how good our seniors are or how good our seconds are?
I don't think we can afford to be that cute. I reckon it's both. Like, it has to be, really. Like, I think both parts are equally under the microscope. You just look at how many players we have out of contract, and I think what's his name? The Stocker and Burns was mentioned as, I dare say if we had a one, we'll probably get announced. But yeah, they're on the cusp of being re-signed. But outside of that, Jimmy Webster, I think Ross rates him. I think he does. And I rate. Everyone knows my thoughts on Jimmy. I love him.
Yeah, Jimmy.
It's interesting. It's just like with the seniors, I suppose it does boil down to what can we get if they were to leave? I think
correct.
Like say Sebastian, if we were to go down the trade route with a player like Sebastian, for example, if we could get a second or a third round pick, because I'd like to think, I know we've got a plan. I don't know what it is, obviously, but a team like the Gold Coast, where they've got 3 academy, like pretty much like top 10 talents waiting. So I just want us to be creative and sort of like how they did the Jack Bowes kind of deal last year, where basically, what I'm trying to say is that I'd like us to get our foot in the door and just take advantage of a situation like that. And if it means like losing a few senior players, and that we're able to give those picks to Gold Coast, so they can, the draft points, and that nets us a top 10 pick. Yeah, I think that's how the seniors might be a bit vulnerable.
Yeah. All right, beautiful. Well, that is Joycey junk mail for the first and probably last week you'll ever hear it. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sending in all your questions, of course, brought to you by Bentley Social. Now, North Melbourne, I won't be here for the North Melbourne game, so regardless of win, loss, draw, I will be happy because I will be in the beautiful sunshine in Uluwatu in Bali. So quite glad I won't be there if we're getting beaten. But 4:40 Sunday afternoon, make sure you get down. It's going to be easy to get a seat. Going to be easy to get a good seat. So come on through. They've just played. So they've just played against Hawthorn, and Hawthorn gave them a bath. Hawthorn should have won by more than they did. I think, how much did they win by? 48 points in the end. They kicked 12 goals, 16. North only managed to score 6 goals, 4. So 10 scoring shots in a game of football. That's St Kilda numbers. We had one more on the weekend. We had one more scoring shot than North Melbourne, which is just embarrassing in all remarks.
Can't believe it.
Yeah. What do we need to do, Marshy? What's the setup?
So I reckon the boys they need to rock up. They need to pick themselves up. The fans need to get out there because, If we were 14th and we're in the situation that we're in, you could probably, recuse people for not wanting to get down to the football. But the facts are we are firmly in the hunt for finals. Whether or not we deserve them is another story.
Yep.
But this is, the what I will say is that. Sorry, have we lost Sarah?
Yeah, I think we've lost Sarah just for a second. That's all right. I'll invite her back in. She'll come back in. But what do you want to say from the boys?
I just want to see us going for it. I want us to actually, our leaders, our senior players, to be the ones that are doing the heavy lifting, and the younger ones underneath them should be complementing that. I feel like the scales have been tipped the other way around, and we've been asking far too much from the young ones, and the natural attrition has caught up to them. And our seniors are just going through the motions, it seems. Like, you look at the stats, and the stats don't look too bad on paper, but the eye test, the pub test knows that it's a completely different story. You want to see Steele just impose himself. He is a dominant player, but he's been a shadow of himself this season. And, so I want to see him get out there, start laying the tackles. And I want to see, when the other team roughhouse one of our boys, I want to see our boys come in and just
fly the
go,
flag.
hang on, that's not there. Fly the flag, because Stocker was doing that early in the season. And I think, I don't know, ever since Caminiti, whacked the fella, I don't think we have seen it from the Saints where, the remonstration with other players. I think we're too nice. We've just gone back to old habits. That we're just too nice of a football club. We're just going to show up, and we're not going to give you too much grief. We're going to try and win the thing, sure, but we're not going to ruffle any feathers in the process. I want to see us plucking. I want to see us plucking North, because they're last, aren't they, or second last? Let's treat them that way. That's what I want to see. And I just want to see a comfy win, but at the same time refine those processes. I want to see us kick the ball into the forward line with some purpose and, I dare say it, composure.
Yeah.
I mean, asking that much. Sarah, what do you want to say this Sunday?
Yeah, thanks, Marshy. I want to see a team. I want to see a team playing for each other, really. And I think, that sort of mentality bleeds into what you were just saying about, remonstrating with other players and getting up in the opponent's face, being like, you don't do that to my teammate. You don't do that to my brother. You absolutely do not treat us that way. Don't disrespect us. It's at Marvel. It's our home deck. It's a home game. So I agree with what you said, Joycey. Get down, everyone. It's hard. It's a Sunday. I know it's cold and it's under the lid, but, there's only so many games left. I think the support will help. But, I want to see – I sort of want to see us gang up on North. Yeah, and as I say, treat them with the respect that second last on the ladder deserves, and where we are.
Yep. And last time we played them, we got really, really we were quite sheltered. And that's not a Marvel pun, but they really flooded.
They sucked us into their style.
They really sucked us in. And what I'd hate to see is that they do that same style of play where they flood the back line and just pound it out. And eventually get one out the back. I'd love to see us do what you were talking about earlier, Marshy, not get sucked into bombing it in and hoping for the best. Just work your way around it until you can find a target. And if you don't hit the target, I'll give you a pass. But at least you're
thinking about it. You're taking a bit of a risk, like
and that's what I want to say. I want to say boys take pride in their possession, not be nervous about possession. But the best footballers that have ever existed all took pride in their possessions. It wasn't about how many they've had or how many goals they've kicked or anything like that. It was taking pride. So you look at. Who can I say? I reckon Jordan Dawson from Adelaide is a perfect example of that. He is an absolute gun of the AFL because no matter whether he gets 15 touches or he gets 35 touches, they all mean something. They all mean something coming off his boot. He doesn't like to waste the ball. We have too many players that are okay with wasting the ball as long as on the stat sheets it said it's gone over 40 meters, so it's an effective kick. We've got to have players that take pride. And that works both ways as well, because you need the boys on the end of that football to take pride and go, okay, well, he wants to make sure that I get this football in my hands. I have to do my bit of work.
Yep.
I have to really do my bit of work. And unfortunately, we just don't have the cattle that's doing that at the moment.
No, that lack of desire to help each other out just, doesn't make for strong links in the chain, does it?
Yeah, correct. In saying that, this is a do or die game. It's really become that way.
If we lose, then that's
we're done.
Put a fork in it.
Yeah, forget it. Yeah, forget
it. If we lose, we'll finish 12th. It's as simple as
doubt.
that. We'll be out of the 8 by the end of the week. You don't want to see a team like Hawthorn, who are third bottom, doing what they did to North Melbourne, and a team that is 6th in St Kilda not being able to do that. So, Hawthorn put West Coast to the sword and beat them by 150 points or wherever it was. And then St Kilda came out the next week and beat them by 9 points. So this is where it needs to change. There needs to be movement on field and off field. We need to hit the reset button, refresh ourselves mentally, especially for this game. I think that's the biggest flaw that we've noticed in the second half of our seasons over the past few years, is that mentally we drop off big time.
Yeah.
And teams that make finals and teams that make top 4 don't. They drop off for a week at most, and then they're back on.
Yeah. It's finding that fine line this week, I think, between composure, but also the alarm bells will be ringing, I think, with some matches that we'd have recently. The West Coast match where they'd come off their absolute drumming from Sydney. The case again this week of the caretaker coach curse, and now against North, a side who really, for these last 6 matches, have nothing to lose other than to showcase their young talent and to showcase where they're going. Yeah, I think while we do need to focus on ourselves and what we can do, I would want to see us have our guard up a little bit. I don't want us to walk into this match and say, well, it's North, we'll get over it. It's like, well, we barely got over West Coast.
Yeah,
we
barely
got over North.
Yeah, and that was what really annoyed me about yesterday, is we did exactly the same thing against West Coast. We knew that we should have known that they would come out the way that they did.
Yep.
And we just weren't ready for it. So we had the perfect practice with West Coast, and we did exactly the same thing against Gold Coast, except for they've got the quality to make you pay, whereas West Coast didn't. And I honestly wasn't surprised with yesterday's game.
No.
I was surprised with the lack of effort. I honestly didn't have us penciled in for the win. I didn't think we were going to win it.
Same here. Same here.
Yeah.
Wasn't a lock.
So, yeah, that's right. So you factor it in, and it was really, really disappointing with how it played out. But in the scheme of how our season is positioned, I don't think the result itself has derailed us at all. We've got so many winnable games. And one thing that I will say is that this could, like Max King, we didn't talk about it, but the fact that they've announced that they're rehabbing, they're getting him right to come back for this season. So Membry, they did the same thing, like just put in, I thought it was a bit cute, but if we can just hang on, and I love to hear Ross say that Membry is tracking better and quicker than they expected, because we needed him. We needed him 3 weeks ago because he is that general that he knows what it's like to be in a shit St Kilda forward line in terms of the delivery coming at him. So he'll be able to tell the boys, I've been here for years. Come with me. I'll show you. This is how we do things around here. But so that's it. But Jack Hayes, we've got some reinforcements coming. But King, I know that. To me, I'd prefer him just to get done what he needs to.
100%.
Have the surgery, go get it right, because they say it won't impact his pre-season. Bullshit, it wouldn't, because you're telling me that if you're delaying a procedure by 6-7 weeks, that's not impacting his preseason. Nah, like he has it done now. Now his preseason starts once his shoulder. He has that operation. It's been pushed back 6 weeks. So I think it's clearly come down to the doctor saying you're not going to do more damage. We don't think. Do you want to play or do you want to have the surgery? And I reckon Maxi has gone. I want to play.
Oh yeah,
you can't force a player to go have a surgery. You know, it's his body.
Of course not.
So I think
Of course not.
I think that's what's happened, and it could be a stroke of genius because you know you get those reinforcements in, and we just managed just to grind it out, find a bit of our identity, our DNA, and then bloody look out. That's why I'll be spewing if we don't make finals this year.
Yeah. Correct. Marshy, I know you just had a bit of a spiel, but I'm going to see if you've got a little minute for us.
I do.
Yep, all right, done.
Yep.
Marshy's minute. Marshy's minute. Marshy's minute. Marshy's minute.
Yes.
I'll keep it snappy, guys. I'm sorry. I've hogged the mic today a bit, so I'll keep this one as succinct. You might have seen it. The Andy Lee. There was a clip from this podcast he went on, and it was about the time that he got cut down. In his words, he got cut down to size quick time by Chris Judd. Did either of you guys hear that?
No.
No.
Okay, so he's talking about the time that he met Chris Judd. Andy's obviously a mad Carlton person and was in the change rooms after a game. He would have been about 29 or 28. Juddy's obviously still playing. And apparently Juddy's come up to him and he's just like, what are you, 8 years old? Because he's wearing a top, right? And since then, he's never worn a top. Like, you know, he's never worn a Guernsey. And
Guernsey, yeah.
to me, that is the saddest thing I've ever heard. Because, you know, they never meet your heroes, but still, what a jerk. Like, I always knew Chris Judd was a wanker, but I've never had anything definitive to go on. It was just like, you just look at him, you're like, I don't like the cut of that. You know, great player, but I don't think he's the best bloke. I think he gets a lot of smoke blown up for how good a fella he is. Because to me, if you're making, I'm a big advocate for grown people wearing jerseys because
you take the grown.
That's why they make adult sizes.
Exactly right. So you know, excuse me, Mr. Judd, but us buying these jerseys are helping you do what you do. And let's just, if you want to get technical, you're doing your job in a singlet and short shorts. So, if you really want to pick hairs, then there's that. So ultimately, to Andy Lee, I am so sorry that Chris Judd made you feel less of a supporter. And if I heard of any St Kilda player doing what Juddy did to him and make a supporter feel less about themselves, then I would have a word. So that's that.
Good call,
Good
Marshy.
Well
I mean, to play the devil's advocate, though, I mean, you know, someone living in a mansion in Brighton being out of touch, it's just unheard of, really.
That's true.
Yeah, that total flog.
That absolutely floggish behaviour.
Yeah.
And
You don't get those.
Carlton.
Yeah, classic. I was going to say you don't get those characters at St Kilda, thank God, because that isn't Saints footy. That's not what we're about. Wear your colours anytime, any day. Get your Guernseys on. I've got like 6 or 7. You know, I'm not ashamed of them.
Same, half a dozen.
Yep.
That's it. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
All righty, guys. Well, I think we might wrap it up there. Thanks again for listening in, and thanks for the good discourse and chat. Sarah, thanks for popping on with us. It's always good to chat to you, hear your views on Saints footy, and hopefully we can get the Chockies against North Melbourne on Sunday at 4:40. Make sure you get down to Marvel. All right.
Fingers crossed. Thank you.
Go
Enjoy it
Saints.
with a bingtang. Enjoy it with a bingtang.
Yeah, we'll do. I'll be poolside with me with my iPad out. So it'll
Do
be
you have a
nice.
Saints like Hawaiian top, Joycey?
Oh, that's it. Not a bad
The
shout.
bucket hat.
The bucket
true.
hat. I've got the Red Rooter bucket hat. Don't have a Saints bucket hat. If not, I'll just wear the Saints Guernsey. And
Oh, that's it.
Your
Right?
mission,
they
if
fill up
you
Chris
choose
Judd.
to accept it, Joycey, is if you can find, because they got like all the sport, I want you to get a knockoff Saints jersey if you can.
Okay, done. Yeah.
And
If
yeah,
I see
just
any
send a
Saints, yeah.
snap of you watching the game with a binny in your bootlegged Guernsey.
Absolutely.
good.
Okay, done. Yeah, deal. All righty, guys. It's been an absolute
Love it.
pleasure. And go Saints.
Up the Saints.
Go
Shampoo my hair. I really love my Saints footy, and I love the feeling. Soldiers of family. Oh yeah, Saints footy, Saints footy, Saints footy, Saints footy, Saints footy. Saints booty, Saints booty, Saints booty.